Linda Warren.
Good morning and welcome to the First Unitarian Society of Madison. My name is Kelly Asprooth-Jackson and I'm one of the ministers here. Today I'm joined by my colleague, the Reverend Kelly Crocker, and the worship team of Drew Collins, Linda Warren. Okay.
Good morning and welcome to the First Unitarian Society. My name is Kelly Crocker and I'm one of the ministers here. Today I am joined by my colleague, the Reverend Kelly Asprooth-Jackson, and the worship team of Drew Collins, Linda Warren, Stephen Gregorius, Daniel Carnes, and our combined First Unitarian and James Reeb choir with a guest conductor, Heather Yonker, who is James Reeb's music director. Welcome to you all, and thank you for being with us this morning. The vision of First Unitarian Society is growing souls, connecting with one another, and embodying our Unitarian Universalist values in our lives, in our community, and in our world. If you are visiting us today, welcome. We are so very glad that you are with us. If you would like more information about First Unitarian Society, please stop by the welcome table located in the Commons. We also hope that you'll be able to stay and join us for coffee hour immediately after service, which is also in the Commons. Now, during coffee hour today, there will be a special forum held in the Landmark Auditorium. Ramaya Whiteside, the Associate Director of Ex-Incarcerated People Organizing, will be speaking about his experience and about felony disenfranchisement here in Wisconsin. Coffee will be served over there in the Landmark as well, so please don't feel like you have to choose between the two. So head over to the Landmark after service. And for those of you connecting with us virtually today, we're glad you are with us as well. I hope that you can take a moment after service to watch the announcement slides. They'll happen right after the postlude. Learn a little bit more about what's happening here at FUS. Now, on the weekend of October 29th and 30th, we will be observing our annual All Souls service, where we will be remembering all of the members of this congregation who have died in the past year. We would also love to include the ones that you have loved who have passed in this year. So if you would like them remembered and honored in that service, please send their names to me. You can find that email address on our website, fusmadison.org. And we have a special announcement this morning from Steve Goldberg about our upcoming Autumn Fest Cabaret.
How did you know I was shy? Well, good morning, everybody. You know, thank you. The theme for these weekend services, I understand, is the meek shall inherit nothing. And I need you to know that FUS members are not meek. And we are inheriting quite a few things in our tradition and our legacy, among which, of course, is cabaret. And it's my pleasure to talk to you a little bit about this year's event, which is an Autumn Fest Cabaret on Saturday, November 12, between 11 o'clock and 4 o'clock. This entire campus is going to be transformed into one huge autumn festival. Compost? You said compost.
You can buy the Holy FUS compost at Cabaret.
Okay. This is going to throw us way behind schedule, just so you know. There will be animals to pet from a local petting zoo, so you're close. Yeah, so there will be, in this transformed campus that will turn into what? An autumn festival. And it's going to feature all kinds of activities and events, plus a great silent auction and live auction. I understand the auctioneer is fabulous this year. Yeah, I'll talk to him later. And the event will include fire rings so that we can make s'mores. S'mores. We all like s'mores. And speaking of food, we'll have food trucks. And speaking of food trucks, we're going to have a food drive. And you'll have a chance to experience games and crafts and music throughout the day from 11 to 4. And we also want to talk a little bit about the silent and live auctions and the raffle. These are great fundraising events for the congregation. And I don't know about you, but whenever I know that cabaret is on the calendar, I know that's one of the special events of our calendar. And I've been involved with cabaret for more than 30 years now. And when my kids were younger, they loved cabaret so much they called FUS the Cabaret Church. And the Cabaret Church will be sending you this postcard. In a couple days you'll get it, so keep your eyes out for it. And give you a chance to make sure you mark that date on your calendar, Saturday, November 12th, yes. And the cost is $35 per family, or if you're just coming alone, $15 per individual. And I'm sure you can see why this is one of our favorite events here at FUS. So, hope to see you at the Autumn Fest Cabaret on November 12. There will be a song. There will be a song. And it goes something like, Winterfest. We'll have some family fun at Winterfest. And all we ask is that you be our guest at Winterfest. Autumn Fest, that's from last year. Okay, goodbye, we'll see you.
Thank you, Steve. And now, I invite you to join me in a moment of silence as we center ourselves and bring ourselves to this time and this place, joining together once again in community.
Es ahora que estamos llamados a ser testigos del mundo, a enmendarlo, a cambiar su curso, a restaurarlo. Es ahora que somos llamados a vivir nuestros valores, a no escondernos, a no temer, sino a ser audaces y a hacer ruido.
It is now, when we are called as witnesses of the world, to mend it, to change its course, to restore it. It is now when we are called to act on our values, not to hide, not to fear, but to be bold and loud.
Es ahora que somos llamados a continuar nuestra lucha por la justicia, a organizarnos, a levantar las voces. Es ahora, reunámonos, démonos valor unos a otros, celebremos.
It is now that we are called to continue our fight for justice, to organize, to speak up. It is now. Let us gather, let us give each other courage, let us worship. And I invite you now to rise in all the ways we do, joining together in the words of affirmation as we light our chalice. We light this chalice in memory of the courage of those who have struggled for freedom, the persistence of those who've struggled for justice, and the love of those who've built beloved communities to carry on the light of hope.
That slide, it's beautiful, but let's sing our opening hymn together. Number 1020 in the teal hymnal, Wo Ya Ya.
like to call forward at this time anyone who would like to hear a story. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for joining me up here. So I have a story for you today, and in this story there are some animals, 2 animals in particular. And so, oh, you already read ahead, so you know, yeah. So here's my question. I have a question for you. Does anybody have a tiger impression they can do for me? I like it, yes. All right. Yeah, that's a good one too. Very nice, very nice. Any other tigers? Ow, that hurts your you got to be careful with your voice. Yeah, it's a little rough on the throat when you growl like that. Okay, so we've got some good tigers, very good tigers. Here's my second question. Who has a fox impression?
What does a fox say?
Ding, 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 ding. I confess I didn't anticipate that, but well played. I think about 8 years is about the right time span for things to arrive. So, yep, there we go. Very good. Eat. Yeah. Okay, so the point is, a fox is maybe a little less loud than a tiger, right? Maybe a little less intimidating. So here is the story about the fox and the tiger. One day, the fox was minding its own business when the tiger caught up to it in the forest. And what usually happens when the tiger catches up to any animal in the forest is that the tiger eats that animal. That's just the way of things. So the fox was facing down the tiger and thinking, how am I going to get out of this one? And the tiger said, well, I'm going to have to eat you now because that's just the way that things go. And the fox very cleverly said, but you don't want to eat me because I am the king of all the animals. And all the animals in the forest have to bow before me. They're all afraid of me. They have to show me respect. The tiger didn't really think that the fox was playing it straight on this one because the tiger was not aware of any vote about who was going to be the king of the forest. And the tiger looked at the tiger's self, looked at the fox again and thought, no, I'm pretty sure that I'm going to eat you. And so the fox said, well, let me prove it to you. We'll go to all the animals. I'll go up to each of the animals in turn, the whole forest, as many of them as you want, and you'll see just how afraid of me they are. Now, stay close by so you don't miss their reactions. So here comes the fox, and the tiger very close behind to make sure that there wasn't any funny business. And the fox walks up to the first animal. Let's say it was a peacock. And the peacock, what do you think the peacock did? It bolted. Exactly. It ran right away. All right, okay. The tiger's like, oh, all right. Well, the peacock, fine. But what about another animal? So they went up to the warthog. What do you think the warthog did?
Run away.
It ran right away. Of course it did. So this happened again and again and again. Every animal that the fox approached ran straight away before he could say anything, before there was any sort of opportunity to talk, just bolted in the opposite direction. So from this, the tiger was pretty well convinced. Okay, I guess the fox is the king of the animals. I didn't get the memo. My apologies, Your Majesty. You can go about your day. Now, let's see if we can figure out if there's a lesson to this story. What do you think?
I figured out why they ran away.
Why did they run away?
Because the tiger was behind them, so they saw the tiger and they ran away from him.
Right, the tiger was right there. So what lesson should we take, do you think? What do you suggest?
I think the lesson is that some fox was smaller than the tiger, but fox was really clever.
That's right, the fox was smaller, but the fox was more clever. Which there's not always a relationship between size and cleverness, but maybe sometimes. What do you think?
If you lie, it might turn out that you're lying. The person who's lying.
Oh, okay. So 2 lies sometimes sort of work themselves. All right, yes?
Are foxes as smart
Are foxes as smart as octopuses? Well, I am not a marine biologist, but I've heard that octopuses do use tools sometimes, and I don't think foxes do, so that's a leg up there. Let's take one more thought on what's the lesson we should take from this story. What do you think? People con their way into royalty. That's right. No more thrones, no more crowns. That's the lesson we're going to take. Okay, I like that lesson. Here's one more possibility I'm going to offer you, all right, is that just because people are afraid doesn't mean they're afraid of the thing that you think they're afraid of. But if you set it up right, it doesn't matter because fear is a powerful force. All right, have a great class, y'all.
Go your way in peace, wander as you may. Blessed be the path you take, may love guide you on your way.
And I invite you now into this time of giving and receiving, where we give freely and generously to this offering, which sustains and strengthens our community here, and also the work of our outreach offering recipient. This week, our offering will be shared with Voces de la Frontera, a membership-based community organization led by low-wage workers, immigrants, and youth, whose mission is to protect and expand civil rights and workers' rights through leadership development, community organizing, and empowerment. There are multiple ways to share your gifts this morning. There are baskets at the entrances to the auditorium, and you'll also see on the screen that you can donate directly from our website, fusmadison.org, and you will see the text to give information there as well. We thank you for your generosity and your faith in this life we create together.
Just beautiful. Thank you. In the Gospel according to Matthew, we find the recitation from the mouth of the teacher Jesus of 8 Beatitudes, 8 blessings of the future. And among these 8 is this one: Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. It is a lofty promise, seemingly in line with the quotation several chapters later that the last shall be first and the first shall be last. One day the world will pass into the hands of the humble. One day force and power will no longer rule. But as Steve alluded to earlier, my title today should suggest to you that the waters of this prophecy are about to be troubled. A few of you may have recognized the origin of that title, but for the benefit of those who did not, several decades ago, Frank Zappa sang these words: "Some take the Bible for what it's worth when it says that the meek will inherit the earth. But I heard that some sheik just bought New Jersey last week, and you suckers ain't getting nothing." Now, sheik is a title that can be religious or political or both in the Muslim world. This lyric dates to the early 80s when common American stereotypes matched Arabs and Muslims with spectacular wealth created through oil sales. That stereotype, like any stereotype, is reductive, prejudicial, and wrong. Although I am conscious of something that a friend who happens to be Muslim remarked to me once: when the whole world around you proudly announces its hatred and fear of the color of your skin, or your dress, or the sound of your name, or the religion your grandfather practiced and you would otherwise think about only at holidays and family gatherings, it can make you almost nostalgic for older and more quaint prejudices, like when they just thought all of you were rich. This month, we are talking about courage together. And last week, my colleague and our minister, Kelly Crocker, spoke to us about courage, finding it for ourselves and helping each other to do so. She said, "Hope is an act of courage and resistance and vitalizing sustenance for your soul." How many times have we conflated hope with optimism, believing that if I turn away, if I don't take in the pain, if I don't engage with the loss, then the situation will be okay. I will be okay. Somehow it will all work out. But that isn't courageous hope. Courageous hope requires something else: a movement, an action, perhaps a facing of fear, or a leap of faith, or a great deal of trust. She was right, as she so often is. Hope cannot be lived out without courage, and courage cannot be expressed passively. And so I am here now to take Frank's side in the debate across the centuries between Zappa and the man from Galilee. The meek shall inherit nothing. At least, depending on what we mean when we say the meek. There is much in religion which valorizes a patient forbearance, the quiet, even serene acceptance of one's own lot. I've chosen to highlight an example from the Christian tradition, but it is not limited to that faith. The noble, suffering widow, for instance, is a sort of stock character of morality stories to be found in the Jewish, Christian, Muslim, Hindu, and Confucian traditions, among others. A marginal, anonymous, poor character who does not complain or raise a fuss and is somehow praised or rewarded at the very end of the tale for her righteousness. And Jesus and the Buddha Both are lauded in the stories about their lives, specifically for accepting the contempt, the injustice, and the violence which they bore without returning the same to their persecutors. This is not even a value which is exclusive to religion. What might we say here about the concept of Midwest nice? About the cultural expectation of avoiding conflict, leaving certain things unsaid, maintaining a blithe and placid affect? Is this not an ethos which expects all who follow it to be meek? Which is not to say that there is not a virtue in patience and humility. Many people on earth could do with a good bit more of both, myself very much included. But at its worst, and its worst comes all too often, the encouragement to meekness does not serve to humble the exalted, but to humble the already humbled, to bless the status quo where it needs to be chastised instead. I'd be hard-pressed to find a more catastrophic example of this than the words of the Apostle Paul, deemed so important that he repeated them in 2 separate epistles: "Slaves, obey thy earthly masters." The Greek term that is translated as meek in the Gospels might also be rendered as gentle or mild. But the word itself is closely associated with horses, specifically horses which have been broken sufficiently to accept a saddle and a bridle. A horse fit to be ridden. Though such an animal is unambiguously useful, it is hard to view a human life, once equated to such, as an end in itself rather than simply a means to an end. Now, 2 weeks ago, I spoke with you about courage and fear, and how fear of the right sort, in the right proportions, can actually stir us to courageous action in defense of the things which are most precious to us, the things we fear to lose. But so much of our lives and the world around us are shaped by a quiet and pervasive fear, which keeps things as they are, which keeps us as we are, which compels even some of the loudest and most aggressive of us to remain, in truth, meek. This is the fear of non-acceptance, not by one person or one group of people, but by the whole. The fear that if we do not accept the world will not accept us. And out of this fear, we comply. At least most of us do, much of the time. Just one personal example. I'm not trying to implicate anybody else here. I drove here today in a vehicle that burns gasoline. I have no moral justification for that, except that I live in a society and occupy a tax bracket in which almost everything about my life would need to change radically before I could change that one thing. The good that we each might do with the lives that we have to do it with has around it an invisible fence built out of our fear of becoming maladjusted to the society in which we live. But I come with good news for you, friends, because it is the work of our congregation and others like it to help each of us, you and me, to grow in courage and become more thoroughly and creatively maladjusted. And if we are to start somewhere, my proposal would be to gather our courage to be a little less nice and a little more kind. In his novel, God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater, Kurt Vonnegut's titular character greets a maternity ward full of newborns in the following way. Hello, babies. Welcome to Earth. It's hot in the summer and cold in the winter. It's round and wet and crowded. At the outside, babies, you've got about 100 years here. There's only one rule that I know of, babies. God damn it, you've got to be kind. Tenzin Gyatso, the 14th and current Dalai Lama, expressed a similar sentiment when he wrote, "My true religion is kindness." Perhaps that seems too simple and too mild. We think of kindness as a passive trait, polite, inoffensive, the sort of thing that one compliments the meek on because they have no other virtues worth noting. But I am here to tell you that the practice of gemilut chasadim, that's the Jewish term for it, the cultivation of metta in the Buddhist understanding, the living of a life devoted to loving kindness is the most challenging and the most radically countercultural way to be that I know of in this world we share. Deep, real kindness requires a courageous and unflinching attention to the needs of others. My mentor, the Reverend Dr. Richard Gilbert, proposed that one ought to do unto others 20% better than you would have them do unto you. 20% to correct for subjective error. If anything, I would say that's a conservative estimate. The brave and disciplined kindness is not only in conflict with our own petty grudges, profound frustrations, justifiable angers, and unjustifiable hatreds. It can even seem to compete against other virtues. In one Buddhist story, an old woman gave her meager savings to support a monk devoted to living a pure life and cultivating virtue. To test whether his devotion was worthy of her largesse, she sent a young woman to visit his hut. At the old woman's instructions, the younger woman reached out to the monk lovingly. He flatly and coldly rejected her advance. Now, when she heard what happened, the old woman confronted the monk and burned down the hut that she had paid to build for him. He had proven himself unworthy of it. Certainly, she said, he was right not to break his vow of chastity, but he should not have been so unkind about it. This is where we come back to the question of what it means to be meek. Because you can be quiet and passive and easy to exploit out of fear or just having been beaten down by the unkindness of the world. And you can also be patient and humble and ready to return evil with good because you are deeply rooted in a determination to be actively kind. Actions and behaviors which appear similar on the surface can be radically different in their depths. Perhaps then, those 8 Beatitudes describe the way things should be, not the way that they always are. As Martin Luther King Jr. wrote as he languished in a jail cell, time itself is neutral. It can be used either destructively or constructively. Jesus' list of blessings describes the constructive use of time. The best way for those in mourning to be comforted is for other people to offer them comfort. Human beings are most often at the mercy of other human beings, so let them be merciful and receive mercy. If we looked to the peacekeepers as the children of God, maybe then the leaders of nations would listen to them more often. If those who hunger for righteousness are to be filled, then it will depend on human action, not least of all, their own. To ensure that the pure in heart see God, I would suggest that we show them God in action, in the practice of compassion and loving kindness from one person towards another. For the persecuted and the poor in spirit to possess the kingdom of heaven, which was, in Jesus' teaching, the purpose and the promise of all life on earth, that ideal state in which no one is a stranger, must first be accomplished by people working together. Then the meek shall inherit the earth, once we have all gotten it to a state that is suitable to pass on to them. Once we have become sufficiently maladjusted to the way things are to overcome our fear of their changing. I want to close here with a special invitation about one opportunity our congregation is offering to cultivate courage and maladjustment. Beginning at the end of this month, I will be leading a 4-part class about sharing our own deeply held beliefs with one another, entitled This I Believe. As Unitarian Universalists, there are a number of values which are profoundly precious to us: economic and racial equity, religious pluralism, and the practice of democracy among them, which desperately need more and more persuasive advocates in the public square. So I think it is a worthwhile thing for all of us to practice articulating who we are and what we believe. But this class is not just about speaking. It is also about listening to each other. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the great German Lutheran theologian and martyr of the Nazi concentration camp in Flossenburg, spoke eloquently about the listening role of a congregation. I want to share his words with you here at some length. His counsel was from a Christian to other Christians, and it is composed in the language of his tradition. I believe, however, that it applies with equal potency to our mixed multitude as Unitarian Universalists. I ask you to join me in bringing to his words an open and a curious heart. The first service that one owes to others in fellowship consists in listening to them. Just as love to God begins with listening to his word, so the beginning of love for the brethren is learning to listen to them. It is God's love for us that he not only gives us his word, but also lends us his ear. So it is his work that we do for our brother when we learn to listen to him. Christians, especially ministers, so often think they must always contribute something when they are in the company of others, that this is the one service they have to render. They forget that listening can be a greater service than speaking. Many people are looking for an ear that will listen. They do not find it among Christians because these Christians are talking where they should be listening. But he who can no longer listen to his brother will soon be no longer listening to God either. He will be doing nothing but prattle in the presence of God too. This is the beginning of the death of the spiritual life, and in the end there is nothing left but spiritual chatter and clerical condescension, arrayed in pious words. One who cannot listen long and patiently will presently be talking beside the point and be never really speaking to others, albeit he be not conscious of it. Anyone who thinks that his name is too valuable to spend keeping quiet, will eventually have no time for God and his brother, but only for himself and for his own follies. Now, in paraphrase of Bonhoeffer, it is the very work of God to listen to each other. That doesn't mean to listen without disagreement. It doesn't mean a pure free-for-all in which the loudest voice always wins and no space is made for the meek or the voiceless. But an idea from a confessing Lutheran that resonates profoundly with our own tradition as Unitarian Universalists. When we are open to each other, we are open to the source of all truth and all being, which some people call God. And when we close ourselves off from each other and fail to listen to one another, we cut ourselves off from that same source. This community exists in part to build up the courage of everyone who is a part of it, that we might each overcome the fear that leads us to accept the unacceptable, that we might grow brave enough to be kind. Whether this one particular opportunity is the right one for you or not, may you find here the courage to be meek only as an active choice and not as a condition forced upon you.
Thank you. Each week we gather here bringing the joys and the losses of recent days. We share these, knowing they are held in love. Today we join in a moment of prayer and meditation as we hold the people of Raleigh, North Carolina in our hearts, knowing that there have now been 532 mass shootings this year. We once again turn our hearts in anguish and anger toward the senseless loss of life that has become so common in our days. We also continue to hold the people of Ukraine who continue to fight for their freedom, their peace, and their lives. We hold all who are struggling in the grips of violence and fear. May we join together with these words from Sean Neil Barron. There are not enough candles in the world. Not if we lit one each time death came to knock. For each one lost to violence, each one attacked, each one caught in the crossfire, each one left holding the broken pieces. If every time we gathered together, converging on town squares, green commons, seeing other tear-stained faces on Zoom, lit only by the faint dancing light of candles, together lamenting, together rejoicing the life that still lives, there would not be enough candles. At first, there would be runs on the stores to buy them, a new practice taken up with vigor, shelves left bare, a determined remembrance for each departed at first. After a while, though, it would be just another item to buy on the grocery list, every night gathering together to read another set of names, each night bleeding into the next, and still not enough candles. Part of me wishes that we would engage in this lament. Part of me wishes that those who make the weapons, who sell the weapons, who pass the policies and pass the hate along from one person to the next would all be there. That slowly the growing list of names would smooth away the rationalizations, the false projections, the twisted logic, the false hopes, the idealistic dreams that all dwell within the violence. But I know, and we all know, there are not enough candles in the world. May we hold all this and all that lives in our hearts in a moment of silence. Blessed be, and amen.
There is a love holding us. There is a love holding all that we love. There is a love holding all. We rest in this love. And now let us rise in body and or spirit to sing together our closing hymn, number 391 in the gray hymnal, Voice Still and Small. Voice still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing. In storm and rain, sorrow and pain, Deep inside all, I hear you call, singing. In storm and rain, sorrow and pain, still will remain singing, calming my fears, quenching my tears, through all the years,
We need the courage to question the powers that be, the courage to be impatient with evil and patient with people, the courage to fight for justice. In many instances, we will be stepping out on nothing and just hoping to land on something. But that's the struggle. To live is to wrestle with despair, yet never allow despair to have the last word. Blessed be. Go in peace. And please be seated for the postlude.
Sometimes I listen on the radio while I'm watching TV, and sometimes the TV is better than the radio.
Yes,
Just saying.
as are many of us.
Yes, well, there you go. It all works.
Yeah.
I know. Volleyball is, and we finally got our Brandel girl back.
Yeah, yeah, she's working her way back into the starting rotation, right?
Oh, geez. Always something.